Humans of AI listeners, Alora Weaver here. This Thanksgiving break, we wanted to drop something special into your feed. As AI continues to reshape education, many are wondering how it will impact learning and what new skills the emerging workforce will need to thrive in this tech-driven landscape. We're sharing a fantastic episode from our friends at Fund, Build, Scale podcast. It's a conversation with Nectir co-founder and CEO, Kavitta Ghai, who shares how she transformed her frustration as a student into a fast-growing, VC-backed Edtech startup, building an AI-powered tool for the classroom. If you love it, find Fund, Build, Scale wherever you get your podcasts, and get ready for more stories from Humans of AI. Now, let's get to it.
This is often what I talk about when I go speak at UCSB or USC or these schools where I'm talking to students who were my age when we started this company. I tell them this moment right now when you're 2021 is when you are going to have the least to lose in your life. You are already a broke college student. So to go from a broke college student to being a broke founder really doesn't feel like that big of a difference. So in hindsight, my God, we were taking a ginormous risk. We turned down full-time job offers. My co-founder dropped out of UCSB. Like, we just said, screw it. We're going to put all of our time and energy into trying to see what happens. And we had no idea that it was actually going to be VC fundable or turn into a real company. But we had so little to lose at that point of our lives that it didn't feel like a big risk.
Kavitta Ghai co-founded Nectir 7 years ago when she was still an undergrad. Today, schools across America are using it to create custom AI assistants that give students and faculty 24/7 support. When she started, she didn't know anything about writing code, product management, or raising venture capital. Her perspective on tech, entrepreneurship, and the realities of building as a first-generation founder isn't just insightful, it's necessary. I'm Walter Thompson. This is Fund, Build, Scale. If you're curious about how to launch a company when all you have is an idea, subscribe to Fund, Build, Scale. I'm talking to founders, investors, and others about the strategies and tactics they're using to build billion-dollar businesses. My goal is to uncover information that'll help you make fewer mistakes and get to market faster. Sound good? Please subscribe. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Hey, Walter. Good to be here.
I scarcely know where to begin because your story is, it's a very unique story as far as entrepreneurship and company building. But so let's talk about the launch. How many years ago did Nectir actually launch?
Yeah. So my co-founder Jordan and I started Nectir 7 years ago when we were undergrad students at UC Santa Barbara. And so for us, it was really born out of the frustrations that we had with the classroom and the education system. And essentially one day we said, what if we stopped complaining and we actually did something about it? And for me personally, I am autistic and I have ADHD. So no classroom that I've ever been in before has felt comfortable for me or my brain to be in my entire life. And then I got to college and I started paying $40,000 to be really uncomfortable. And that's finally when it became enough of a pain point for me that I said, either I'm going to drop out or I'm going to do something about it. And at that time, I had no idea that it was going to turn into a $6 million VC-backed edtech company that changes the face of AI in education. Honestly, all that I wanted was to feel like the technologies that I was using in my classroom weren't built by someone who hadn't seen a classroom for the last 10 years, because that's what it kept feeling like. And so I approached UCSB and I said, can somebody please explain to me, if me and 26,000 other people are paying you $40,000 a year, and this is one of the best public universities in the world, why is it that it feels like I could go get the same education on Google or YouTube? Why is it that the part of college that really feels the most valuable and salient to me is all happening outside of the classroom itself? You told me, you promised me, this first generation student whose parents came to this country to give me this education. The movies and everyone promised me that college in this country is an education that is unprecedented, that you can't find anywhere else, and it's going to prepare you for this incredible future. And I think that happened for me outside of the classroom and the orgs that I joined and the communities that I was a part of. But I think almost every college student in the US can tell you that the actual coursework just feels like a means to an end. It feels like we have to get this piece of paper, the degree at the end of this 4 years, that signals that we are now functioning members of society who are allowed to make a little bit more money than everyone else. And when you think about education being the birthplace of every innovation throughout history, it doesn't make sense to me, especially at a time where we're being faced with some of the biggest crises that humanity has ever come to face with. Why are we not pouring all of our time, energy, and resources into giving students and the future generations of this country all of the tools and resources they could possibly need to create new innovations, solve these insane problems that we're facing, and actually get the most that they possibly can out of their education if we know that this is the greatest opportunity that all of us have for upward mobility? It just seems like a no-brainer to me that we should be focusing a lot more on solving the education problems that we have in this country than we currently are today.
So you didn't just, ask for help. You actually devised a solution of some sort. Let's talk about that. The professor introduced Slack as a resource, and it opened things up for you. What happened after that? How was the world different?
Absolutely. So if you told me 10 years ago that I was going to dedicate my 20s and my life to education in the classroom, I would have never believed it. So this was not something that I thought of as being my passion in life, or absolutely not something that I was going to start a company at 21. But the idea for Nectar initially just sort of fell into my lap. I had taken a class the summer between my sophomore and junior year, that was taught by a grad student instructor, Spencer. And he had decided to use Slack in this class. I had never seen it be used in a classroom before. I'd used it in, my business orgs and my internships. But he said, we are going to come up with a better way of communicating. Rather than you waiting 2 days to get an answer for me over email, or having to walk into office hours, or even worse, just trying to figure out the answer to a question on your own, we're going to have this Slack community where all of us are going to be there together. You guys are going to be able to ask and answer each other's questions. If someone answers another person's question really well, I'll even give you extra credit for it, because that lets me know that you understand the material so well, you can turn around and teach it to the person next to you. And he said, I want us to really challenge what cheating actually means, because I don't think that cheating is you guys helping each other, whether that is, if it's in the middle of lecture and I just went past a slide too quickly and you don't want to disrupt the class and raise your hand, great, go put it in the Slack chat. Someone will be able to tell you what was on that last slide. I'm not going to punish you for not having written down that note fast enough, or you got a text from your mom and you forgot to take that last note. That's life. That's okay. And so he said, we're going to approach this class in a realistic way, right? And so I don't want you guys to be punished for not having all of the answers all the time. That's just not what reality is like. And what I want to teach you is that when you go into the real world, you've got to rely on the people around you to help you fill in the blanks sometimes. And so I need you guys to be better at asking questions of each other, asking for help, figuring out how do you build the confidence in your voice to say, I don't know this thing. Can someone help me? And long story short, you can already tell from just me explaining that, but it was the best class that I've ever taken in college. I walked away with the highest grade that I've ever gotten. I am still friends with people from that class today because it actually allowed us to build a community and a network in that class, which I think is actually probably the most valuable part of any college class. Mm-hmm. And I walked away like a dog with a bone. I was like, oh my God, put Slack in all of my classes and it will solve the majority of my issues. I will finally have somewhere to go to figure out, how am I supposed to navigate this 4 years that I'm at this institution? What is this next class that I'm supposed to take? How do I do my homework tonight? Whatever my question is, if I can access the 26,000 people around me who may have a lot better advice for me and actually be able to say it in a way that I understand, that will solve the majority of the problems that I'm facing. And I guarantee it's not just me. And so I had initially asked UCSB in that first conversation, why can't you put Slack in all of our classes? And that's when I first started to understand why our education system is the way it is today. It is not the fault of the educators. It's not the fault of the administration or the staff. It's just that we have this archaic system that is really difficult to navigate. They explained to me how putting a separate Slack workspace in 1,500 classes every quarter, to then teaching professors who are on average 55 how to use an enterprise level tool that they've never used before, to then on top of both of those things, paying an enterprise level cost for this technology. When you think of all of those things together, it's unfeasible. It just is not possible to make that happen at scale across a campus, let alone multiple. And they said, it sounds good in theory, and maybe you have one or two instructors use this, but we are never going to be able to deploy this across a campus because it's just not built for that. And rather than kind of saying, okay, thanks for talking to me, I decided to say, well, what would it have to look like for you to be able to scale it across the campus? What if we could build Slack for schools? Tell me exactly what to build and I'll go do it. And let's see if we can make it happen.
And so sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask if you had a technical background at that point before you started thinking about this product.
It's usually everyone's very first question when they hear that. And no, both me and my co-founder, I was a communication major. He was a environmental studies major. We had no technical background at all. And this was 7 years ago. So there was no, Claude can code it for you and all of these tools that we now have that makes it really easy to spin up sort of an MVP without having any technical experience. But at that time, I think what we did really well was go and try to figure out how have startups solved this problem in the past? What is the sort of steps that you're supposed to take? Because we had no business school. We had literally nothing on campus that we could go access that would tell us how do you build a company from scratch, or how do you even start with an idea? So my co-founder had read, I think, 0 to 1 at that time and Lean Startup, knew enough that we could say, okay, an MVP is a minimum viable product, and we need that to be able to test out this idea and even see if there's a market for this. Are we thinking about the solution in the right way? And the best thing we could think of at that time, and this is all thanks to my co-founder who had just done a couple Google searches and figured it out, was to take open source code off the shelf and test out the closest version to the Slack for Schools idea that we had in our mind, and get as many people as we could to start using it to be able to give us feedback on it. And so for the first 3 to 4 years, it was just me and my co-founder. We bootstrapped. We did it all on our own with no technical experience at all. And we just used open source, no code tools, and got enough of a duct tape version to be able to test out, is this idea even feasible?
Was there any point where you thought to yourself, I can't do this, or we shouldn't try to do this, it's too risky? Or did you just kind of dive in thinking, well, let's see how far we can get?
In hindsight, and this is often what I talk about when I go speak at UCSB or USC or these schools where I'm talking to students who were my age when we started this company, I tell them this moment right now, when you're 2021, is when you are going to have the least to lose in your life. You are already a broke college student. So to go from a broke college student to being a broke founder really doesn't feel like that big of a difference. So in hindsight, my God, we were taking a ginormous risk. We turned down full-time job offers. My co-founder dropped out of UCSB. We just said, screw it. We're going to put all of our time and energy into trying to see what happens. And we had no idea that it was actually going to be VC fundable or turn into a real company. But we had so little to lose at that point of our lives that it didn't feel like a big risk. Now, at 28, I know that it was. And I'm very, very lucky that it turned out the way that it did. But I implore young people to understand that when you have the least to lose is the best possible time for you to take this kind of a risk. You actually need the naivety and the delusion to believe that this isn't that big of a deal and that you can just make it work if you put your mind to it. Because if you start on this journey knowing how hard it's going to actually be, you'll never actually start it. You'll never go down that path. I would have never done this had I known how hard it actually was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, good luck building Salesforce Tower if you have acrophobia.
Yeah.
Okay, so you built Nectar 1.0, we can call it, I suppose. How did that actually turn into a viable business?
Yeah.
Because you had one customer at that point.
Yeah. We had one customer, and the way that we even got the contract with UCSB was we were not ready to turn it into a licensable product at the time that we did, but we were building it hand in hand, sort of going door to door to every classroom on the campus and asking, can you please try this in your class? You know, can you test it out with your students? Tell us what you hate about it, what you love about it. And we were just taking our sweet time to do this because, again, I already wasn't making a paycheck. And so to still not continue making one didn't feel like that big of a deal. And then when you don't have any VCs at that time and you're just bootstrapped, you really do have the luxury of taking all the time that you want. So we did. We took 2 years to just build this MVP. And then in that process, you know, once your fishing line is in the water, at some point, you never know, it might catch something and you kind of got to just be ready for it. And that was exactly what happened to us. It was, my dad always said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And that's basically how we got our start, because in February of 2020, UCSB came to us and said, hey, don't tell anyone, but in about a week, every single school in this nation is going to go fully remote. And we need an official communication infrastructure to basically take our entire campus online indefinitely. Can you guys do that for us? And my co-founder and I looked at each other, and the correct answer was no, we couldn't have done that. But it's one of those times where you say yes and you figure it out. And that is exactly what we did. We took 24 hours. We hired some engineers on Upwork. We did the best that we possibly could to get ready for this. And a week later, we onboarded 20,000 students onto Nectar overnight. It was one of the most stressful weeks of my entire life. But you got to say yes to those opportunities when they arise. And in getting that first customer, it allowed us to then, you know, a couple months later, go raise VC funding to go replicate this over and over again. And I think what is the most interesting part of, you know, sort of summarizing the 7 years and how we got over that initial hump is it was really difficult, truly, to go sell Nectar Chat school by school. And, you know, we're selling directly to the admins. So we're trying to get into the CIO, the vice provost, the deans. And these are people 3 times our age. We've just graduated school. Like, this is a tough sell in an industry that is already known for insanely long sales cycles and just impossible barriers to entry. And somehow, school by school, one by one, we got enough of a community of people that would take our calls and talk to us and give us feedback. And a few schools that even started paying for it on top of UCSB, that I actually think the most value that we created in that time was the relationships. That was the hard part. It wasn't actually selling the product. It was building the relationships with these people on these campuses who could tell us not just great idea and great job on this product, but hey, by the way, here's what else we're looking for. These are the other things that we really need. Would you guys ever think about building this? That is the secret sauce in hindsight. In those conversations over, you know, about 5 years from 2020 to I'd say 2024-ish, like those 4.5, 5 years, we had built up enough relationships with schools across the nation that they started to tell us, hey, this feature that you built, we had built our first AI feature around 2023. It was an AI teaching assistant that sat inside of these Nectar class channels, and teachers could go and upload the syllabus, the textbook, the assignments, and it would create this repository of knowledge that they could then go ask their AI TA questions 24/7 about the material, and it would give them the right answer. So like private chat GPT for your class, basically. Mm-hmm. And it was just a feature. But again, because of those relationships, Stanford GSB ended up coming to us in October of 2023 and saying, hey, we really love that feature that you guys built, that AI TA. But would you ever consider building an entire platform of custom AI assistants that would allow us to basically train it with our own proprietary data, have it be FERPA compliant, not have to share that information back with OpenAI or whoever the model company is. That's actually really something that we need right now. Just wondering if you guys would ever consider building that. And again, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. When your line is in the water, sometimes it'll catch something. And that was how we got our really, really big break. We decided, you know what, if Stanford is looking for this, this is something that other schools probably need too. Let's go explore what would happen if we took this one little feature inside of Nectar Chat and turned it into its own standalone platform. And so we spent about 6 months in private beta with Stanford GSB, Boston University, Questrom School of Business, and Los Angeles Pacific University. And we started building Nectar AI. And we decided to release Nectar AI in May of 2024. And in 6 months, we did as much revenue for Nectar AI as we had done in 6 years for Nectar Chat. That actually became our biggest, luckiest break. And that is how we've grown Nectar as quickly as we have in under the last year that we've released it. But I say this because it's a really important point that I want young entrepreneurs to understand, that Nectar Chat, what we had initially built, actually wasn't the lucky break. It was a nice to have. It wasn't a need to have. And at the end of the day, we're still solving the same problem, but we found a better solution to that initial problem of how do you provide 24/7 student support? Mm-hmm. How do you make every single class actually valuable to every single student? But the only way that we would have come to this lucky break that we're at now is if we had stuck it out long enough and built enough relationships with customers and allowed for enough of that honest feedback from them to understand what they were actually looking for, and to also be able to admit to each other at some point that what we had initially built is nice, it's great, but it's not actually what we should be focusing all of our time and energy on.
How did you and Jordan actually kind of divide and conquer as far as roles and responsibilities?
We have this philosophy that I call our zones of genius. And what we tell everyone on our team is that you have got a zone of genius. And the way that you figure it out is it's the thing where if anyone else tried to do that task, you would get pissed off. It's the thing where if you just do this, like that would be a better way of doing it. If you start to have that feeling about anything, go do that thing for them. That is your zone of genius. Your brain naturally understands it. If it's pissing you off, it's because you know that you're going to do it better. And if everyone is able to figure out what their zone of genius is and just do those things, that's actually where we make the most progress and have the most efficiency with the fewest amount of people. And so when we first started the business, I wasn't CEO at that time. He wasn't CTO. We just were co-founders. And it took us a couple of years to even figure out like who's going to do what. And okay, this is clearly a CEO position. This is clearly CTO. We kind of knew what our interests were, and we had an inkling it was going to go in that direction. But you really have to naturally allow your zone of genius to emerge in front of you. And for me to be able to discover, I'm actually, without even trying, really good at doing product marketing. Like that's just where my bread and butter is. My brain naturally understands this is how to frame this product in the right way. This is how to go build a community on LinkedIn of all of these people who love Nectar and would, this is how I get an inbound pipeline going. It just came naturally to me. And in the same way for my co-founder, building a product roadmap, getting customer feedback and translating that into actual features, going through the code base and figuring out where the problems are and who we need to fill in the gaps. That was his zone of genius. That is his zone of genius. And when you allow it to naturally emerge without any judgment, and you're not thinking this is what I should be doing, but instead you just sort of say, what do I want to authentically do? That is two things. One, where you're able to hire the fewest amount of people to get the most work done, which is I think what every startup should optimize for, is you should hire as few people as you possibly can. And two, it's what allows you to make every day feel like it's not work. There's not a single day that either of us wake up and feel like, oh, I have to go to work today and I have to go work 12 to 14 hours and it's going to, no, I never feel that. No one on our team feels that, because we actually just get to do what our brain truly enjoys doing every single day.
I mean, looking back, which one of you, or maybe perhaps both of you, were doing customer discovery, kind of owning that process?
Great question. both of us. And I think it should be actually every single person on the team for as long as you possibly can. We actually have a feedback session in a couple hours, and the entire team is going to be there because I want every single person to constantly be hearing customer feedback, because every single one of us is building a different part of this product and this company. You've got to hear directly from the people that you're building whatever it is that you're building for. You need to hear if it's actually landing in the right way. And I think one of the best things that happened to us when we first started Nectar, like I said, we didn't have a business school at UCSB, but we did have something called a new venture competition. And a lot of schools have this, and it's basically a pitch competition. And so as part of this pitch competition, it goes on for a few months. And one of the things that you can do at UCSB is take an entrepreneurship class alongside it. And it was taught by a couple of VCs who ended up being our first VCs. And one of them, Jason Spivak from Entrada Ventures, he taught us what I still think is one of the most important business fundamental lessons that I will ever get. He said, for the duration of this class, every single person on your team is going to talk to 10 new people every week. It doesn't have to be customers. It could be people who could potentially be customers, people who might be market experts in this, but whatever it is, you're going to find 10 new people every week, and you're going to talk to them, and you're going to come back to class and tell us what are the findings. How is this iterated, your idea of your company based on those conversations you had? And in having us do this process of customer discovery on a consistent clip, 10 people every week for 10 weeks on end, it built this muscle in us to, one, get over our fear of going and talking to new people and sort of baring our brain to them and showing them what's inside and getting their feedback on it. And two, it allowed us to truly understand how valuable that customer discovery process is. And that it is not something that you just do in the beginning of a product or the beginning of a company. It's something that you should do every single week forever, until the day that you sell your company or IPO, or until the day that you're not there anymore. So we have kept that behavior up for the last 7 years straight. 10 new people every single week that we talk to. And not just to ask them, would you buy this? But just talk to them about every part of what you're building, what problem you're solving. The world is going to tell you whether you have a viable business or not. And you're going to need to check in on that every single week.
It is a tricky dance, though, and I know you can't be too responsive when you're doing customer care and making sure you're trying to distill their feedback into products. How did you discern at the early stage that the thing you were building for UCSB would be useful for another client or another person you hadn't even talked to yet? How did you kind of reality check those things before actually committing and putting them in the product pipeline?
Yeah, great question. I think the most important, when I go back and think about what we did best in that beginning period of time, it was starting with a very basic MVP that sort of proved our thought process of students have a lot more questions than they're actually asking in person, and we need a better way of answering those questions. And so, before we built in any features to it, it was really just this basic chat system. And we got that question all the time of, how is this different than Slack or Discord? And it wasn't. It was literally the exact same thing. But it was to prove the behavior, right? We needed to see, is this a behavior that people will actually do? And is it something that we have to push them to do? Or is it a big enough problem in their life that they will actually just naturally pick up the behavior and use this product to solve that problem? And that's really the magic sweet spot that you're looking for. Is if I give people this duct tape version, it's like not even what I ideally want it to be, but it's good and it gets the job done, right? If I give this to them, you should ideally be solving a big enough problem that they will take even a duct tape version of the solution and start using it. That is the proof of, oh, this is a big enough problem that it's, one, VC fundable, which means it's a deeply pervasive issue that enough people have that there's no solution for yet, that they will pick this up and start using it. And that really is the key indicator that you're looking for to see, should I continue down this path? Should I raise money for this? Should I even build more features into this product? Is this something that I should even take past an MVP? For us, the answer was very quickly yes. students have enough questions that they want to be in this group chat with other people in their class and get the problem solved. And you have to figure that out even through the negative feedback that you get. Like, so many students and teachers said, this looks just like Slack. It's the exact same thing. Why would I use this? But even in complaining about it, they still kept using it. And that actually is a really positive signal. If people have complaints, if people are talking about your product at all, that's a good sign. And so when people, especially in times when, the servers would go down or it would crash or a feature wasn't working, and we would start getting just inundated with really negative feedback, but people saying like, oh my God, you guys are idiots. How is this not up online right now? Like, the servers are down again. That actually was positive feedback. It was something that was so important and integral to their lives that if it went down for a couple hours, they freaked out. Right. So for the first couple of years, all we got was negative feedback. But that in itself was enough. Feedback is always net positive.
You're still listening, so I assume you're getting something out of the episode. If that's the case, please take a moment to subscribe. How many jobs have you had before you were CEO of Nectir?
0.
Okay, so you don't have any sales experience at all?
None whatsoever. I mean, I worked at In-N-Out in high school. And
I would say
drive-thru.
This is America. I'm no shade. I'm going to say burgers kind of sell themselves. God bless America.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, especially at In-N-Out, I can't really say that I was a salesperson.
Yeah, you're just
it was selling itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
But you're clearly good at it because you have customers and you're scaling this thing up. So I guess my first question is, when did you realize that you were the product marketing salesperson? And was that a surprise for you?
Oh my God. It was a huge surprise and it was terrifying. When I realized that, oh shit, I'm the salesperson. I've got to be the one to sell $1 million of this thing before I can hire anyone else to do that sales process for me. It was probably the most terrifying part of this entire experience because I could not wrap my mind around why would a CIO of Harvard, who has been sitting in that position for 20 years, why would they buy a product and sign a 6 to 7 figure contract with a 20-something-year-old who has literally never had a previous job before Nectar? Like, it just logically was not sitting right with me. I didn't have the confidence in myself or in the product to think I'm going to be able to do this. I thought this is going to be the problem that kills the company. I really did. I thought me not knowing how to do sales is going to be the reason that we fail. And it was true for months. I was just terrified. And I think that there's a couple pieces of advice and learnings that I have from that. One is, it is unfortunately true that it is so important to do founder-led sales for as long as you possibly can, because there's got to be someone on the team who has the ability to quantify the customer feedback that happens when you ask someone to buy the product. It's very different than when you ask someone to use the product. People can use a product and find it incredibly valuable and have it solve these really serious problems. But if they don't see it as something that they would actually pay for, and if they don't actually not just say I will pay for it, but actually give you the money, and then turn around a year later and give you money again because they still want that solution, that is when you're building a business. And that whole process has so many steps in it. And so the few lessons that I have that I learned in hindsight that I wish I could go back and tell myself is, one, you just got to get through it. You just got to do it. You got to take the leap, and you are not going to know how to do sales in the beginning, and you're going to learn through trial and error. It is truly the only way to do it. You have to go in and see what is the right language that I have to use to get this customer over the finish line. And then you have to figure out for your specific product in your industry, how many touch points is it realistically going to take for me to take someone from the very first discovery call to even get them on that discovery call to then giving me money and me putting that check in the bank? How many touch points does it take? For us, we've identified it's 18. It takes 18 different touch points, and that sometimes a lot of it is happening even before that first discovery call. It's them finding us on LinkedIn, it's seeing an email, it's hearing about us at a conference. A majority of those touch points, I'd say 50% plus, happen before that discovery call happens. And then about half of them happen throughout the process, where you're going from discovery call to a demo to sending over a proposal to actually getting it done. And for us, a sales cycle in EdTech is typically 9 to 12 months. It is the longest sales cycle I've ever heard of in my life. It's literally a government contract. It is incredibly difficult to do. So if I could have figured out how to do this process, I think anyone can. At any age, it doesn't matter what you're selling. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. But can you figure out how to make this sales cycle work for you and your company? 100%.
Were there any resources like a book, a podcast, something like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People? What was there anything external that helped you get over this hump?
Yes, absolutely. I'd say the free resource is Paul Graham essays. Paul Graham from YC has truly written out every step of the startup journey. And for the most part, it's going to feel always like you're building the plane while it's falling out of the sky. And that's because if you're truly creating an innovative product or solution, there is nobody else who has done it in the way that you are going to. So you can go and read those essays or as many books and podcasts as you want, but you're going to have to extrapolate the advice for your specific situation. I think Paul Graham does the best job at making it sort of universally applicable and accessible. And there is an essay that he has written for every problem that you will possibly run into. And when it comes to going through the customer discovery, to building the product, to actually selling it, and to repeating that sales process over and over, he does one of the best jobs I've ever seen at laying out step by step what that's going to look like and how to validate yourself each step of the way. I'd say the most valuable resource I've had that is not free, unfortunately, but I recommend every single startup who was like us and, came into this with no prior experience. What I recommend you do is hire a senior sales consultant, somebody who actually has done the exact kind of sales that you're trying to do for at least 20 years. And their job is to come into early stage startups and help you build out a sales playbook, test out different markets, test out different messaging, show you how to set up HubSpot and build your pipeline. I had to admit at some point that I don't know what I don't know. It's not even that I don't understand how to do sales. It's that I don't even know what this process is supposed to look like. I've never seen it in front of me at all. Mm-hmm. So the best thing that I did was bring someone onto my team who I could actually watch her. I could see this is exactly how she does it. And she could come sit in my sales meetings and see how I do it. And then tell me, these are the blanks that you need to fill in. This is the stuff that you haven't, nailed down yet. But this is the stuff that you're doing better than anyone else. Don't stop doing that stuff. You actually need someone who's had that experience and expertise to be able to come in and tell you what you're doing right and wrong.
Nice. How big is your team at this point? I'm curious.
Yeah. So our team is 11 full-time folks. We have a couple part-time folks, and we typically do that where we'll bring people on part-time first. And then if it works out for a couple months, then we'll convert them to full-time. So it's, really easy to recruit people that way and not have to make people make hasty decisions about joining a startup. But we have a philosophy of keeping the team as lean as we possibly can. I think especially with AI, there's a lot that you can do with very few people. But also, we've heard this advice from so many folks before, and we've truly seen it in practice ourselves, that the smaller your team is, the faster that you're able to move and iterate. And that really is one of the biggest differentiators that you have against major, big corporate competitors in the beginning, is that you have the ability to move much faster than they do.
I want to pivot a little bit and talk about your first foray into fundraising. Most founders I talk to, their fundraising journey is a little different. They're usually, cobbling together an MVP, and then they try to get to market. And at the same time, they're pitching investors wildly, trying to get their first check. You had a very different process here. You had a customer, and the outside investment was just going to help you scale and serve more customers. It wasn't helping you get the whole thing off the ground. So what was your understanding of VC when you started thinking about, if we want to blow this up, we need some outside investment? What was your understanding at that point of venture capital and how it worked?
Yeah. So I actually came into building Nectar with zero understanding of what VC funding even was. I had seen, headlines of companies raising money, but I never really understood what that meant. And I certainly didn't understand what made a company VC fundable. And so I will say that even with that one customer, we invested all of the money that we got from that first UCSB contract back into the business, but it was not nearly enough for us to actually hire anyone else or even be able to pay ourselves. So we knew by that point we need VC funding to do anything. Like even to get the next customer, we probably need VC funding. But the reason that we were able to get it when we needed it was because we had started building relationships with VCs 2 years before that we started raising. And so when the way that I even first discovered what VC funding was we had a pitch competition, not the NVC one, but it was a really tiny, like there was 5 or 6 companies that were in this. And it was like just a one-off pitch competition at UCSB. And we decided, you know what? It was like 2 weeks after we came up with the idea for Nectar. But we decided, let's just go put ourselves out there. Let's get over our fear of embarrassment. Let's just go see what people think about this idea. And so we went and pitched, and we had 3 slides, one of which said hello and one said thank you. So we had literally nothing to show for at this point. But went up there and did our thing anyways. And it just happened to be that one of the judges of this pitch competition was a VC. And he came up to us afterward and said, you know what? Great idea. There's something in this. I hope you guys keep working on it. It was just a few like nice words that he said. And he handed us his card. And I decided this is the opportunity. This is where you start building the network. It's time. And so I chased him down and I said, hey, actually, would you be willing to go to coffee with us? I would love to pick your brain and figure out what does it actually take for you to invest in a business? And he said, yeah, absolutely. That was my first time realizing that successful people love giving back. They love helping out. And they are almost always willing to take a meeting with you and teach you what they know. And so a week later, took him out to coffee and very candidly said, I don't even know what VC funding is. So I need you to start at the very beginning. What do you do? And why do you do it? And super kindly, he sat there, and this is Brian Coriat from Entrada Ventures. And he explained to me exactly what VC funding is, how he had his own company and sold it and made all this money. And now he invests in other companies and particularly early stage founders, and explained to me what the pre-seed and seed stage even was. And the best question that I asked him was, what would it take for you to invest in my company? What are the milestones that I would have to hit that you would say, yeah, you're ready for funding? And he told me, this is 2 years before it actually happened, he said, if you can get at least 25% of the UCSB student body to use this tool regularly, to be daily and weekly active users, and if you can get UCSB to pay you for their students using it, then we'd be ready to invest in a company like this. And because I asked him so early on, there was no skin in the game. There was no hesitation to tell me the honest answer. He was very transparent about, now that I'm thinking about it, if you did X, Y, Z, I'd be ready to put money in it. That was exactly what I needed to hear, because it gave us this very concrete goal that we knew once we hit that point, we would be able to get funding for our company. And so I think that the greatest lesson that we stumbled into was start building those relationships with VCs and investors way before you ever need to actually raise money from them. And ask them point blank, what are the metrics that you need to see for my company to be VC fundable? And they'll tell you. And you hit those and you raise the funding. And the equation sometimes is actually that easy.
Looking back on your own experience, what advice do you have for founders like yourself from non-traditional backgrounds? And so starting your own thing is kind of risky. Asking strangers for money is unbecoming. How did you shift your mindset here?
Yeah. I would say there's a lot of lessons in this that I'd love to share. One of them, the first one I'll start with, is closed mouths don't get fed. You have to be willing to ask for what you want, and it's the only way to get it. And what I know that in hindsight now that I did really well was I got over my fear of embarrassment really early on, because it is an embarrassing journey to go down. I mean, it doesn't work for a very long time until all of a sudden one day it works. And you've got to have the grit necessary to go through those multiple years potentially where things are not working and you're hearing no after no after no. That is not a signal that you should quit. And if you look at what actually makes successful founders and companies and what are sort of the patterns of those very successful founders, it is grit. It's the fact that they stuck it out even when every signal was telling them to quit or stop or turn around and go back and go the other way. They just kept going. And so if you can get over your fear of embarrassment and ask for the things that you want and ask for it until you hear a yes, and even if that means hearing no for years on end, that's how you actually win and succeed in this space. It is more than anything else a mental and emotional game. And so when people ask me, how do I start to prepare for having my own business? What should I be doing now? My honest answer is go to therapy. Start working on yourself, because your business is only ever going to be as healthy as you are. And your relationship with yourself is going to come out in every part of your business. It is truly bearing your soul to the world. And that's why you've got to be really, really comfortable with seeing it yourself first if you're going to show it to everyone else. So that's the first piece of advice that I have. The second piece is there is no magic moment when it is the right time to start a company. If I had waited, I had so many friends in college that said, I want to start a company, but I'm going to go get a corporate job first and I'm going to save up some money. And oftentimes, especially coming from backgrounds like ours, where you don't have, generational wealth to fall back on, that does seem like the most healthy and correct way of going about things is, let me go get some experience, let me save up some money, and then I'll go do my own thing. Let me tell you, not a single one of those people have 7 years later started their own companies. Not one. Because once you start making a paycheck, and you have an income that is set and you have a lifestyle that you've adapted to, you're in golden handcuffs. It is nearly impossible to walk away from a salaried lifestyle. And so, again, I go back to going from a broke college student to a broke founder truly did not feel like I was making any sort of a step change at all. And it basically is like you're just extending your college experience for another couple of years. So that, to me, the younger you are, the earlier in life that you start this, the better. You have the least to lose that you ever will in your lifetime. And you have to be comfortable with taking these big risks in order to get the big reward. So there is not a moment that you have to wait for of, I finally have the experience, or I have the money, or I have the connections. No, start right now. Right this second is the best possible time to start your company. There will never be another moment that will come in the future that will be a better time to start it than right now.
Where is Nectar at its funding stage right now? Where are you exactly?
Yeah. So Nectar just raised our seed round of funding last year. We raised $4 million. And so to date, between our pre-seed and our seed round, we've raised a little over $6 million.
I think people who come from underrepresented populations, when it comes to tech, I think there are certain psychological barriers. And I think people who look like you and me working in tech have to develop a unique kind of mental and emotional resilience that maybe other people might not need to do that. What's your sense of that as far as like the psychological barriers facing underrepresented founders in tech?
I recently wrote a blog post about this and about what are my learnings that I would pass on to someone who looks like us, because there is no instruction manual for us. And the instruction manual that does exist is written for people who don't look like us. So there's a lot of times where I've just had to sort of figure it out on my own. And also be my only cheerleader because I am playing a game that was not built for me. And I'm reminded of that constantly in VC funding, in the sales cycle, in everything, in every conference I go to. It is a reminder that I am the anomaly in the room. It's why I say that this is such an emotional and mental game that you're going to be playing, that you've got to build the resiliency within yourself to be sort of your own validation system. You can't be waiting for the world to tell you that you're on the right path or that this is where you should be, because these games were not built for us to play. The only way that changes is if we break into the room and create opportunities for people like us to sit at the table. We have to be doing that. This is the first time in history that people that look like me and you are able to go raise VC funding and build billion-dollar companies. That has not happened before this generation. And so I believe it is my responsibility to carve this path for everyone that comes after me. I remember being at the start of this and thinking, and I still think that, I can't point to a single other woman who has gone down this path with the background that I have, who has started this company as a neurodivergent woman of color while she was in college, trying to solve one of the biggest problems. That hasn't happened. I've never seen it before. It doesn't exist. And it's really scary because it could very easily trap me into thinking, well, if nobody like that exists, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Can't wait
right?
for a role model, certainly. Yeah.
Exactly. And while it would be really easy to fall into the fear trap of this, I've instead found a way to reframe it and turn it on its head to allow the anger I feel towards this reality to fuel me. I never, ever want another founder, a young person in this country or anywhere, to feel the way that I did when I started this company. To have to sit there and wonder, is this a game that I'm allowed to play? I never want anyone to question that ever again. And the only way that I can think of to solve that problem and to resolve that anger that I have towards this system that was built to keep people like me and you out of it is to stay in the game for as long as I possibly can and win. Failure is not an option. And when I'm able to make the drive and motivation, not just for me to make this generational wealth and to make this company, but for something much bigger than me, when I make it for the sake of all of us, then I have an unlimited source of motivation that I can pull from at any time I need to. When shit gets really, really hard, it's not the thought of me sitting on a yacht one day that motivates me. It's the thought that I will set a precedent for every person that looks like me that comes afterward. That if I do this well, it will create an entire new universe of opportunities for my community and people like me. That is what motivates me through the tough days. So I'm not going to sit here and tell people that look like us that this isn't going to be difficult. It is. That's the entire reason that you should do it. Be the leader of your community. Be the motivation for someone else that comes after you. Do the hard thing now so that people don't have to do the hard thing after us. It is our responsibility to do this for our communities. And it feels incredible to make it happen. It is well worth the hard work and the effort.
It's March 10th right now, 2025. When you look ahead to the rest of the year, what are you excited about and what are you worried about?
Yeah, I think this is, in the 7 years that we've been doing this, the most exciting moment that we've ever had in the history of Nectar. And it's because we've been given the opportunity to work with the California community college system. It's the largest school system in the US, 116 colleges across California. And I truly believe in building AI for education, that to make a truly accessible and equitable education system means that folks like me who are building these products, it's our responsibility to deliver them first to the students who would typically get them last. because that is the only way that we make sure that AI doesn't further create gaps in our society. Normally, it would be schools like Harvard and Stanford who have the money to pay for these insane technologies, and community colleges would be the ones to get it last. But that can't happen. There's going to be some serious repercussions as a society that we'll face if people like me decide to chase the money instead of the equity. And so for us to focus all of our time and attention on the largest community college system in the world and actually get a deal with them and get a statewide pilot and a statewide research study going, it's incredible. Because to me, it really feels like I am solving the problems in the education system that I set out to 7 years ago. I am able to now make decisions that align with my morals and values that maybe another person in my shoes wouldn't have chosen. They would have chosen the easier path and the easier money, and I didn't. And I'm incredibly proud of myself and my team for doing that, because now it's going to set a precedent for the rest of the nation that their community colleges should also be the first to adopt these technologies. And I am thrilled to see that, you know, we're competing directly with companies like OpenAI and we're winning. And I want other young folks out there to see that it is absolutely possible to go up against these huge competitors and win, and to do it without any prior experience. Because as long as you have domain expertise in what you're building and you're truly doing it for the right reasons, I do believe that the universe rewards you for that. So I'm very excited that we have this ginormous deal with the CCC happening right now, and that it's going to, you know, open up these opportunities with all of the other systems in the nation. And it already is for us now. You know, we're talking to so many other states about replicating the exact pilot and research study that California has with them. And likely what that's going to mean is we probably do our Series A at the end of this year or early next year. It's going to be really interesting to see what it looks like to raise a round when you don't actually have to and you don't need the capital and it's more strategic. I think that's, you know, what I'm actually really excited for, but I'm also kind of worried about is I've never experienced being in this position of power and leverage. I've raised money because we had to raise money. We needed that capital to get to the next milestone. Mm-hmm. And now we're in a really, really different position of power. And it's going to be very interesting to see what is it like to be a, you know, Stanford pedigree founder who kind of just gets a term sheet from every VC on Sand Hill without even trying. That's sort of what's happening to us now. And it's really fascinating to watch.
I think my last question for you is, if you were interviewing for a job with an early stage startup, what's one question you'd have to ask the CEO before you could take the offer?
That's a great question. I think for anyone who would like to start working at a startup, especially a very early stage startup where you're, you know, one of the first 20 people in the door, you got to understand you're taking a pretty big risk and you're likely taking a pay cut. And so I think the most important thing that you can figure out before you take that plunge and make the decision to go to work with that company is to ask the CEO and the founders what problem they are solving in the world and why. You've got to understand how deep is their connection to this product, to this market, and the problem that they're solving. Because if they don't have a good answer for why they are the best people in the world to be building this solution, they are not going to win. Whoever is the most confident person about the fact that they are the best person for the job to solve this problem, the way that I know there is not a single other person on earth that I believe should be solving this problem but me. I truly believe I am the best person to do it. That faith is what I instill in the people that I hire and in my team, and why they will leave decades-long jobs to come work with me, someone that is typically half their age, because they know she's the one who's going to make it happen. And so if you're able to have a conversation like that with your CEO or your founder, where they can instill that confidence in you and you walk away thinking, holy shit, they're going to change the world. That's the person you want to work for.
This has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the
well, I'm so glad. I agree. I love this. You've asked amazing questions. This has been great.
Do you have a website or a personal site where people can contact you or learn more about your thoughts on building and scaling?
Absolutely. Would love to connect with the audience and, any young founders out there who kind of are trying to figure out how to get started. Would encourage you to find me on LinkedIn, Kavitta Ghai, or on Nectar's LinkedIn. You can see all of our progress there. We're posting all day long. And you can also find me at my personal website, kavitta.com. That's kavitta.com. It's where I talk about my startup thoughts, and just recently posted a blog post about sort of all of these thoughts of how do you get started? How do you make that first product, the first VC raise? So would love for you guys to find me there and, catch up on any thoughts that we have. But thank you so much, Walter, for the time and the energy. This has been an amazing podcast.
The Fund, Build, Scale theme was written by Michael Tritter and was performed by Michael and Carlos Chairez. Michael also wrote Ocean, which you heard at the top of the show. You can find Fund, Build, Scale on LinkedIn and Instagram. And if you'd like to send me an email, I'm at fundbuildscale@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
A huge thank you to the team at Fund, Build, Scale for sharing that conversation with us. If you enjoyed it, you can find Fund, Build, Scale wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back with another episode next week. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.